Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon or good evening, indeed. Thank you very much for joining us today for an audience with Tennis Ireland. I'm Kathy Livett, the Advantage All project manager, and I'd like to just run through a couple of housekeeping points before we begin. Firstly, the webinar is available in English, French, and Spanish. To select the language that you'd like to listen in, just use the interpretation button at the bottom of your screen. We'll have the chance to ask questions at the end of the session, but please submit your questions at any time using the Q&A button. First, I'd like to introduce ITF President David Haggerty to give us a brief introduction.
Hello, everyone. I'm really pleased that you've joined us today. Last year, we launched the Advantage All Reward and Recognition Program to find out about the different initiatives that national associations are implementing in the area of gender equality, define best practices, and have nations share their learnings with one another. Tennis Ireland was the proud Gold Award winner of the 2022 ITF Advantage All Reward and Recognition Program and joined today to share their experiences with us. I'm very pleased to introduce Gráinne O'Neill, Tennis Ireland's National Coordinator of Women in Tennis and the driving force behind their gender equality progress. Tennis Ireland's gender equality strategy, called Equal Advantage, was launched in May 2021. Their reward and recognition application really impressed us, not only because the range of initiatives that it covers, but for the strategic approach that it took. Gráinne will join us and tell us all about it, including an Equal Advantage charter, where clubs commit to 3 actionable changes to promote gender equality in their club and how they secured 300,000 euros of funding for its programs. We hope you'll be able to apply some of the learnings from today's session to your gender equality strategies. So look out for the launch of the 2023 Reward and Recognition Program at the end of this month. So without further ado, Gráinne, over to you to tell us more about your experiences.
Brilliant. Hi, everyone. Just give me one moment here. I'm going to share my screen. Perfect. So hopefully everyone can hear me okay. So good morning, everyone. Good afternoon as well. My name is Gráinne O'Neill. I'm the National Coordinator for Women in Tennis for Tennis Ireland. I'm delighted to talk through, I suppose, our Women in Tennis programme. And it was a fantastic honour to be awarded the Gold Award for the inaugural ITF Advantage All Reward and Recognition programme. So I suppose just to provide a little background in terms of how the programme began. So back in 2018, Sport Ireland is our national governing body for sport in Ireland. They would have conducted a huge amount of research around women in sport, and they would have released a women in sport policy. And with that policy, there was kind of 4 key pillars that they focused in on. So number 1 was active participation, getting more women actively participating in sport in Ireland. Number 2, coaching and officiating, so more female coaches and officials in Ireland across our sports. Leadership and governance, so more women in leadership roles in administration and at board level. And then finally, visibility, so greater visibility in our sport in Ireland. So off the back of that policy, Sport Ireland would have released funding. So national governing bodies like ourselves, Tennis Ireland, and a number of other sports, along with local sports partnerships, could apply for this funding stream to drive this overall policy. So we would have applied for it in 2019, and we were very fortunate to receive funding. That funding then allowed us to create this Women in Tennis programme. Off the back of that funding that we were awarded, we also kind of looked closely at the ITF Advantage All programme and looked at the various different key pillars they have. So that was kind of how it started. I began my role in February 2020, so just shortly before COVID hit. But it was great in the sense that the next slide, I'll talk through how it began. So very first step with the role was just conducting research. So we wanted to ensure that any program we were creating, that it was closely aligned with what our stakeholders wanted and what they felt should be implemented to improve the overall landscape for women in tennis in Ireland. So I suppose we were lucky in a way when COVID hit. We'd initially planned to do focus groups, but we switched that then to just an overall nationwide survey. So we had 440 responses. We opened it up to men and women. We just wanted to get as much of a broad scope in terms of what their viewpoints were on women in tennis and how to improve it. Interestingly as well, we kept a close eye in terms of the responses we received, what clubs were responding. And we got 75% of our affiliated clubs with either one person or a number of their members responding. So we felt like we got a broad scope in terms of the views of our membership. And then we also would have done a huge amount of research in terms of other gender equality initiatives in sport. So as I mentioned before, we looked at the ITF Advantage All programme, what they were offering and the resources they had. We looked at our own national governing body, Sport Ireland, their Women in Sport unit, and would have used the support they provided there. We also would have looked closely at womeninsport.org. So it's a website, it's a UK company, and they look exclusively on women in sport, and they actually have a huge amount of downloadable free resources on their website. So I definitely recommend, if anyone wants to learn more about women in sport, to avail of that. We also would have just met and spoke with a number of other sports. We're very lucky that there's networking opportunities for us to interact with other women in sport leads in all the other sports in Ireland. So I definitely would have taken advantage, and any of the sports who had already created kind of a women in sport program would have worked closely with them to see how they went about it and if they had any learnings or tips and advice for ourselves starting this program. So with the creation of our strategy, we obviously we collated all the data from the survey responses. We would have looked closely at the Women in Sport policy with Sport Ireland, along with the ITF Advantage All policy. And we identified these following 5 key themes to really hone in on to improve the overall landscape for women's tennis in Ireland. And out of those 5 key values, then we wanted to create specific actions on those following strands. So number 1 was to inspire. So that was inspire women to take up leadership roles within Irish tennis, be that in coaching, administrating and officiating, or at board level. The creation of opportunities for women and girls to thrive. We wanted to create more opportunities, allow people to participate in our sport, try it out, and open up the various different pathways to be involved in tennis in Ireland. Environment was another key theme. So we're really honing in on creating a very inclusive and welcoming environment for all our members. Number 4 was value. So we wanted to place value on women's tennis in Ireland and raise the commercial appeal and just broaden the scope of it. And then finally, one voice. So we really wanted to garner more visibility for our sport and highlight, I suppose, all the wonderful and fantastic female role models we have within our sport. So yeah, so with those 5 key themes, and as I said, we created specific actions out of those. And I'm happy as well, maybe I'll do it once the presentation is over, but we'd have I can send through the strategy document PDF. It's on our website as well too. So I was really conscious that obviously Tennis Ireland, we created this strategy, but what way could we get our clubs to engage with this strategy? And so the idea was to create a charter to accompany that strategy. So the charter, very simply, it's just the blueprint for clubs to follow closely with our equal advantage strategy. So just to give a bit of background in terms of a typical example of working with a club. So we obviously launched this charter, and essentially the road path was that they would have a look at our strategy, read through the document, discuss it at club level, so discuss it at their committee in terms of what they wanted to implement to promote gender equality in our club. And I suppose the great thing is it's creating the discussion around gender equality in women in tennis, but then by submitting 3 specific goals, they're creating actions around it. And it allows us an opportunity to engage and talk through those actions with them, and then obviously to follow up and hopefully provide support or resources in order for the clubs to achieve those goals. So to date, we've had 75 clubs sign up and carry through with their goals. We've been working closely to follow up with them. I wanted to just give 2, I suppose, examples to share with you today. So the first was Carrickmines Tennis Club. It's a club in Dublin. So I would have met with a woman there who was really keen on creating a specific event to celebrate women in sports. So not only women in tennis, but encompass a couple of other sports. So I've actually attached photographs there from the day itself. So we would have had showcases of tennis itself. So we had an exhibition tennis match with 2 top juniors females. We had an exhibition of blind tennis for blind VI tennis with some of our international female players. So you can see there in the top left, Babs Werberg, apologies. She was one of the players in the day, and it was great because they gave an exhibition of their sport, and they also allowed any of the participants on the day to try out. And they had goggles that would impair your vision a little bit to give participants an idea of what it's like to play the sport. So we had showcases of blind VI tennis. We also had showcases of croquet. They have croquet lawns there. We had an opportunity, we had loads of rackets and coaches and volunteers on hand for participants to try out the sport, along with a physio on hand. We did a yoga class, 2 yoga classes throughout the day. And then I guess the really, the bit that I most enjoyed about the day was the panel discussions. So throughout the event, we held 2 live panel discussions with, I think it ended up being 12 different female role models. And interestingly enough, we really wanted to make sure we had female role models, but we also had our male allies advocating for women's tennis and women in sport. So I think in the top right picture, you can see there some of our panelists on the day. And on the left there in that photo, we have John McGann, who's our Billie Jean King Cup captain. So I think it's really important that we not only have women involved, but we also have our male allies to advocate for women in sport. The other point I wanted to mention as well is throughout the meetings that I've been having with clubs around gender equality, a huge talking point is gender representation on club committees. So we really have been advocating for gender diversity on our boards, and that filters down not only from our national board and our provincial boards, but also straight down to club committees. There's numerous different reasons why gender diversity is important, but in the main basis that I feel it's important is our membership base is almost half male female. So Tennis Ireland's view is that that should be reflected in our leadership roles as well, that it should be half female, half male. We would have done a snapshot last year of our affiliated clubs. So we would have very simply asked them, you know, what's your gender breakdown? And do you have any plans to address that if there's a bit of an imbalance? So last year we would have had a number of our affiliated clubs come back to us. Roughly less than half of them had achieved, you know, we're advocating for a target of 40% of either gender, or ideally 50-50 in terms of male female represented. So the first snapshot we did, less than half of the clubs had achieved that. And I guess what's heartening for us to see, and what we're very proud about, is our recent snapshot. 60% of our affiliated clubs have reached that target of between 40 to 50% of either gender represented. So I think that's really important because I think the overall improvement to women in sport and women in tennis is only going to happen with leadership being reflected in that, in equal representation. I also wanted just to highlight a couple of other programs that we run within our Women in Tennis program. So as you can see here, we have a couple of pictures to accompany as well. But first off was our Try Tennis program. So that's a 6-week, 1-hour session with a qualified tennis coach. We've had 290 women come through that program. And I guess the whole idea was, you know, with our research, we recognized there was a huge fear factor for women joining up in our clubs. So we wanted to alleviate that, give them an opportunity to do a 6-week program. And on completion of the program, they'd feel confident enough to join a club and get involved internally and externally with competition or with social tennis or wherever they want to get involved in. So we've had 290 participants, 45% of those women have gone on to join our clubs, which we see as really positive. Another key initiative that we've done is provision of leadership training. So we've worked closely with staff, with administrators on our provincial councils, on our national board. And then more recently, we've worked with captains in one specific region, and we're planning on opening it up to, we have 4 provinces in Ireland. We've got this captains network in one province, and we're hoping to expand it now into all our other 4 provinces. But we provided leadership training, a couple of different areas, overall leadership, communication, conflict, fraud awareness, social media, public speaking, anything that will help them on their leadership pathway. We've provided funding for them to attend specific courses around that. Another initiative that we held was, again, leadership focused, but actually focused more on our young women. So we've ran a program called She Leads. It's a 5 to 6 week online program. We've had 39 young women across our 4 provinces come through the program. We ran 2 cycles of it. So throughout the 5 to 6 week online program, they meet with myself, and throughout the program, they set 1 personal and 1 club related goal. So for instance, a lot of the personal goals would have been around either completing a coaching qualification or perhaps doing an officiating course. And then the club goal usually relates around implementing kind of a social tennis initiative within their club for young girls and for teens. So I guess the brilliant thing about that is 89% of those 39 women have completed their goals, and the remaining percentage are on their way. They either have yet to complete either their personal or their club goal. So that's another great initiative that we ran, and a great way to engage with clubs, because we see it as, if we can empower our young women, then they'll go on to be heavily involved with the club throughout their lives. We've also honed in on obviously getting more female coaches. So we've had 138 women come through our level 1 course, which has been brilliant. And ideally, we hope that those women then go on to further levels. So with our next initiative, we've provided discounted fees. So we've given 30% discount to any women applying for our level 2, 3, and 4 courses that are currently underway or upcoming this year. We saw that as one particular barrier to the women, that you know, the financial support will help them on their journey. And we definitely want to see more women higher up through the coaching pathway, because there certainly is an imbalance. The further up you go in Irish tennis, the greater the imbalance is. So we hope to rectify that with encouraging and empowering women to complete their coaching qualifications. Another initiative is obviously related to officiating. So we've had 29 women come through a 2-day referee course, and we've ran actually 4 courses, 4 2-day courses. Obviously our KPI, we have a KPI of 40 women coming through that course. So we hope to run 2 more by July, which will reach that KPI. So the RSCLP, it's an acronym for the Racket Sports Coaches Leadership Program, is another program we've ran. This is focused in on coaches who've just begun their coaching pathway. And we wanted to give them a couple of different topics outside of the natural topics that you would cover in a basic coach education course. So the great thing about that program is we've collaborated with other racket sports in Ireland. So with that program, we work with Badminton Ireland, with Table Tennis Ireland, and with Irish Squash. So that's been a great opportunity for the coaches on that course to interact with the various other sports and learn from each other, because a lot of the racket sports, we have similar challenges, and learning from each other, it's a great tool, I suppose. With that cycle, we found that coaches have struggled with the 5 to 6 weeks. So we're looking now, based off their feedback, we're looking at changing that to a 1-day conference to get more coaches involved. The last specific initiative that I wanted to highlight was a program called Serve Swap. So we're really keen on ensuring that our teams in our sport continue to play it. And we've been researching and I suppose conducting a bit of a needs analysis in terms of what they're looking for. And based off the research we got back, a lot of them wanted to participate in tennis, but also to have something additional along with the program. So we've created a program called Serve Swap. So it's a 4-week social tennis program. And throughout those 4 weeks, the participants organise a clothes swap shop. So we found that a lot of young teens, they're very focused on climate change and sustainability. So we've partnered up with a sustainability company called the Useless Project. And their tagline is, you don't have to feel useless in the face of climate change. So we've worked with them to create this program. It's going to be delivered by young women in their clubs. So we have 8 clubs signed up with 12 participants. That's only just recently launched. So I'm looking forward to seeing the progress with that and seeing how it progresses. Just, I suppose, to highlight the couple of pictures here. On the bottom right, you see a young woman called Roisin Moore. She came through our She Leads Young Women Leadership Program. And her personal goal was to qualify as a level 1 coach, which she did with flying colours. And then she went on to run a tri-tennis program in her local club in Ennis. So that was kind of a fantastic, she's a fantastic role model for her own club, but it was great to see her progress through and get the confidence then to run a program herself. Bottom left is a woman who participated in, we've run a few women in tennis events. So that was an event held recently in March. It was social tennis and then a panel discussion with some female role models in their club in Lansdowne. And then at the very top of the photo, we see 2 of our current Billie Jean King Cup players, Sinead Lohan and Ruth Copus. We ran a workshop for them to meet and greet young players in our performance squads and get the chance to meet them. And what I love about this photo is it's boys and girls in a squad together. And the boys were just as excited to meet the players and get a chance to hit with them as much as the young girls. So a couple of different learnings I just wanted to highlight, I suppose, through the whole process of creating this Women in Tennis program. So number 1, I would recommend is taking the time to survey stakeholders. It can be very enticing, I suppose, to jump straight in and roll out programs. But I suppose taking the time to survey and get that research from your stakeholders is so key. We had an idea in terms of what we wanted to produce with this Women in Tennis program, but we really got the the full go ahead, I suppose, based off the data that we collected from the surveys. So definitely take the time. You know, I started the role in 2020. We didn't actually launch the strategy until 2021. So there's a lot of time in terms of research. And that kind of rolls in then to my next point in terms of meet and learn from other sports and organizations. Look, we're all trying to achieve the same thing. Take the opportunity to, you know, ask me questions, ask any of the federations that are running similar programs questions. It's just a matter of kind of realizing what works, I suppose, for your federation, and then going from there. Another point I wanted to mention to source money for your program. So resources, you need resources in order to implement these kind of programs. For us, we got it through our national governing body for sport. You know, for yourselves, I'd recommend, you know, reach out to your local governments, to your national government, see what's available in terms of any funding streams. You know, women in sport is a massive topic right now, and there's, I think, a really positive, I suppose, outlook on it, and there's a great push in the media for visibility. So now's the time to advocate for it, and I suppose to showcase what you could do as your federation, the improvements you could make. Just in terms of applications, so with our funding, you know, we've been fortunate to receive €300,000 across a number of years. We've been very clear in terms of, for a good application and to receive that funding, we make sure that our goals align closely with that of our funding providers, Sport Ireland. So we're constantly looking at what they're advocating for and making sure that the specific projects that we're launching and we're implementing closely match those 4 key pillars that I mentioned at the very beginning of the presentation. And in fairness, our strategy closely aligns with the ITF Advantage All and also the women in sport. So just make sure that your goals match those of your funding providers. And again, this ties into the next point of, with each of those themes or pillars that they're advocating for, are you ticking off and implementing a project in each of those areas? So make sure that each area is targeted and you can showcase that through your application. Finally, you know, for us, we found that Sport Ireland have looked very favourably on any of the projects where we've allowed or showcased collaboration. So for instance, the Racket Sports Coaches Leadership Programme, that was, they look very favourably on the couple of different national governing bodies working together. Definitely with our She Leads programme, you know, we're very big advocates for networking, and we create little breakout rooms for the participants to chat and share ideas. So always look at what ways you can collaborate. And, you know, I think for national tennis federations, obviously, we're running a lot of programs, but a lot of it is just facilitating that opportunity for our stakeholders to meet and to network and learn from each other. So just to be aware of that. A couple of different tips as well. Again, this is probably reiterating the point, but survey your members, listen to them, have a clear action plan. So I think that's really important, and setting KPIs, set those key point indicators that you want to hone in on. If you don't set those specific goals, you can't record progress or lack thereof if it is a case, but definitely have a clear action plan. Put resources towards the program. So as I said, if there's funding available, if you can push, you know, if you could have someone full-time looking at this, that would be fantastic. I realize that we're very fortunate that we receive the funding that we can have a full-time, fully paid position, such as myself, to put towards the program, but resources are hugely important. So try to put the resources towards the program. Another, I suppose, you know, learning that we found, and a tip that I would give would be to start small with pilot programs. It can be very exciting, and you want to jump straight in and take everyone on board. But I definitely feel like if you can start small and then build. I think a prime example of that for us has been Try Tennis. Like, we started in a small community courts in the very south of Ireland, in Cork. and we've now grown it to several different locations with close to 300 participants. So I definitely think starting small and building is hugely important. Meeting your clubs and regions, prime example here is in the photo here on the radar to meet and answer the difficult questions. So on the left, we had a fantastic event here held in Lansdowne where we had several women do a bit of social tennis, and then with the live panel discussion, I was involved in the panel discussion, answering questions around women in tennis and obviously gender equality. There were a few tricky questions, and there was questions in terms of what we're doing. So this is good feedback for us to make sure that we're showcasing the projects we're implementing and what progress we've made. But I think definitely taking the time to meet with your clubs, meet with the women, meet with the men, and then organise kind of opportunities for clubs within certain regions to meet as well. The last point I'd make is just don't be afraid to ask. If you never ask, you'll never know, and that's something that definitely carried through. When lockdown hit, we would have organised a lot of webinars and trying to arrange guest speakers, and a lot of the time I would have felt like I couldn't ask that person, they're terribly busy and they're hugely important. But if you don't ask, you'll never know. And I found that people, men and women, are very giving of their time around this topic and around gender equality. So certainly to not be afraid to ask. I think as well, just another example I've just thought of as well was with the leadership program that the ITF run, those fantastic networking sessions. I had an issue and I wanted to ask their opinion around gender representation on our national board, and I got fantastic feedback. And again, that's something that I was a little bit nervous to ask, but I'm so glad that I did. So definitely to not be afraid to ask. The last point I just wanted to make was just to give a bit of more information, I suppose, in terms of plans and where we hope to go with this program. So we have obviously launched the strategy and charter, and we've implemented a few different programs. So definitely the charter we want to get all our clubs signed up to. So we're just trying to look at plans in terms of a promotional campaign to incentivize the remaining clubs to sign up and implement gender equality initiatives within their own clubs. So we're looking at a promotional campaign for the charter. Definitely expanding, as I mentioned before, that captains network that we've set up in one province. We want to expand that out. We're also looking at ways to collaborate with a leadership training company that we've used before, that we could collaborate together and partner up and provide leadership training and open it up not only to our staff and to a few representatives on provincial and national board, but open it up to women in all our clubs. Obviously, again, expansion of another sort, but we want to run further cycles of our tri-tennis program, She Leads, Racket Sports Coaches Leadership Program, more courses with officiating, and expand our serve swap. We're also keen on running more women in tennis events, which again spreads the word, greater visibility and greater goodwill, I suppose, towards the program and what we're trying to do. Our last plan, or our last initiative that we're hoping to implement, is based on funding we received very kindly from, and we're looking at also with our mentors that they be male and female coaches. So a more experienced level 3, level 4 coach working with a newly qualified coach to mentor them in their coaching pathway. So that's our various different plans. As I've mentioned before, I'd be absolutely delighted to chat to any federation. My email is provided there. Certainly have a look at our strategy on our website. If you have any follow-up questions, well, obviously you can ask them now, but if you think of anything once this webinar is ended, please do reach out, because as I said, I love collaborating, so I'd be happy to talk further. So I might pass it over to Kathy then.
Yep. Hello, everyone. Back again. Please do ask your questions in the Q&A using the Q&A button. We do have a couple already, so I'll kick off first with one from Terry-Ann Scorer at Tennis New Zealand. Was the Tri-Tennis programme specifically branded and marketed for women? Was it a regular learn to play course rebranded or targeted in some way for women's needs in learning tennis?
Yeah, that's a great question. Hi, Terry. So the Tri-Tennis program was specifically geared towards women. We would have worked with kind of our local sports partnerships to collaborate together, because we recognise that that obviously anyone who's interacting with Tennis Ireland already plays tennis. So we really wanted to focus on someone who's never picked up a racket or maybe played it when they were younger and is hoping to get back in. So we definitely branded it as a women's Tri-Tennis, only for women. Now, obviously, we had male and female coaches. It was more so just we were looking for welcoming coaches to run the program. And actually, they followed the ITF Tennis Express program. So that's how they would have ran the program. It wasn't, we obviously looked for coaches who had experience working with women, but it wasn't specifically geared towards women's needs. It was just a basic overview of the sport, with the idea that once they'd completed the program, they got kind of an overview of the basic shots of tennis, and then, you know, would be able to go straight into match play on completion of the 6 weeks. So that's how we would have organised that Tri-Tennis program.
Great, thanks, Grania. And then another one from New Zealand, from Ali Telford. What's the incentive to join the charter? I mean, is that a requirement, or is it just something that they're invited to do?
No, it's not a requirement. It's just something that we've advocated for, because we feel like we're not necessarily saying that they need to implement women in tennis initiatives. From our viewpoint, it's an opportunity for them to discuss gender equality at a club level and kind of look at I suppose just look at what they're offering and how welcome they are as a club. You know, it could be a case that in some of the clubs they're offering more programs to their female players than to their males. So could we switch that? You know, maybe they only have male coaches within their club, so could we bring in a female coach? It's really just to create the discussion, and then with the goals, then they can pick 3. Could even be very, very small actions, but 3 actions they want to implement within their club. And I suppose the idea is that we work with them in kind of creating their goals, and if there's resources or funding that we could provide to help them achieve that, we work with them on that. So it's certainly not a requirement, but we see it as beneficial to the club and to ourselves, I suppose, that we're working together with them.
And I guess that's an ongoing initiative that you just continue to try and encourage more and more clubs to get involved.
That's it. And I think from our side, we found that we haven't been great at letting people know the achievements that are happening within clubs. So we've kind of realized that we need to do a better job in terms of letting other clubs know, you know, some really important goals, and I guess the progress that clubs who've signed up to the charter have made. So that's kind of the idea with that promotional campaign, that we create a couple of videos and maybe take some photos of the clubs that have achieved the goals to incentivize and encourage the rest of them to follow suit.
Okay. One from me, actually, just regarding the implementation of the program. What do you think has been your biggest challenge to date in implementing it, and how are you trying to tackle or overcome that challenge?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. Like, there's challenges in every strand, I suppose. One particular one, I suppose, that I found quite challenging was the officiating side of things. It's a tricky job to do, and it's not the most glamorous position to advocate for, but it's obviously hugely important in tennis. So for us, we really wanted to, I suppose, create more awareness around the role, but also to encourage women to sign up. So the challenge, I suppose, that we found was, obviously during COVID, we couldn't run any courses because they had to be in person. So we tried to work around that. We ran an officiating webinar to kind of give people a little bit more of an idea in terms of a pathway being an official in tennis. but there was I suppose limited amount we could do with that. Now it's been great since COVID has been lifted. We've been able to run more courses, and I think definitely with the officiating, we've tried to pitch it more as, here's a basic course that gives you an overview in terms of how to be a court supervisor or referee in a tournament. Obviously, down the line, we'd love to have women sign up to do the ITF white badge or gold badge, but we've kind of taken it as that was a challenge. Let's start small with small steps and get them involved in this 2-day course, with the view then that a few of those women will go on to progress and get involved as chair umpires or involved and run through the white badge course with ITF.
Great, thank you. So small steps, and work from there. We've had another question from Carlos Bravo. What's the ratio of male to female coaches at club level in Ireland? Has it changed because of the programme?
Yeah, so the most recent snapshot was last year. Now we have had a lot of women come through our level 1. We've had more women than men, just over half. Whereas before, our most recent snapshot is it's 33% female and 67% male. So we'll be doing one now at the end of this year, and I think it will have slightly changed. But as of now, we haven't seen a significant difference, but we've had a lot of women now come through the level 1. And obviously with our discounted fees, we've had more women sign up than usual for the level 2, 3 and 4. So that's kind of one that, again, similar to the officiating, it's only really now that we've been able to run the courses in 2021 and 2022, and then obviously this year in 2023. So as of now, we haven't seen a significant difference, but we're hoping by the end of this year, we'll see a bit of a change in terms of the breakdown with the gender.
Okay. And that leads to another question from me about KPIs. I mean, do you have KPIs for all your initiatives? And how frequently do you have a regular milestone when you record and analyze progress? How do your KPIs work?
Yeah, so it's quite a thorough process. It's very detailed, and it can seem a bit arduous, but it's so beneficial to have those set KPIs. So with each of those 5 key pillars that I went through with our strategy, we'd have 2 or 3 projects in each of those strands. And then based off of those 2 or 3 projects, we'd have one specific KPI to reach in each of those. So roughly, say for instance, in the 5 key pillars, we have 2 or 3 projects. So we have about between 10 to 15 KPIs every year. And with those KPIs, then they're reviewed on a quarterly basis. So I guess for us, the great thing is we do progress reports to Sport Ireland. Obviously, they're providing us with the funding, so we're updating them in terms of our progress with the KPIs. I do think it's so important to set those KPIs, even if they are small, because I think you have to hold yourself accountable with the program, and kind of, definitely for us, we've said, okay, we've made progress in certain areas. We haven't achieved all our KPIs. I'll put my hand up and say that. But if there is, I suppose, having those KPIs laid out and reviewing them on a quarterly basis gives us the opportunity then to say, okay, we haven't achieved this, let's focus in on that. And that was something definitely with the officiating. When lockdown lifted, we said, look, we've only been able to do one webinar around officiating. Now that we can run courses, let's really hone in on that and promote them as much as we can. So I'm happy to discuss further if anyone has any questions offline, but I think the importance of setting KPIs is huge, and just being able to say, be very truthful in that, saying, okay, we've achieved that, but maybe we haven't focused much on this KPI, and that's our target now for the next one.
Okay, thanks. I was really interested in this cross racket sport collaboration. That's quite an interesting one. Do you know how that came about, and are there sort of regular meetings across the different governing bodies to share ideas?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're really lucky. Sport Ireland kind of they run a couple of networking sessions for us to meet. So most of our national governing bodies in sport, they have like specific women in sport leads, or they have people assigned to look after the women in sport project. So it actually just came about through a networking session in person on the Sport Ireland campus. And I would have just got chatting to the Badminton Ireland lead. And she was kind of saying, you know, we struggle with our coaches in terms of, you know, encouraging them up and giving them some, I suppose, just some topics and interesting topics. And I kind of saying, well, you know, we have a number of coaches after coming through level 1, and hopefully we can kind of encourage them on to pursue further qualifications in coaching. So it was just through like an informal conversation. We said, well, maybe we could work together and produce some sort of program to help them and support them. And then obviously through that conversation, we met again, and we invited the other racket sports. So we invited the table tennis lead and the Irish squash lead. And I guess from our side, tennis wouldn't be one of the most popular sports in Ireland, along with table tennis, badminton and squash. And we found that collaborating all together, we could actually create a good program with a huge number of coaches, as opposed to trying to do it solely by yourself. So that's something that definitely, if you're part of a federation and tennis is quite on the small scale, maybe there is an opportunity to work with other sports on a project together. And I think it's been great. Like, the coaches found it really beneficial to learn from the other sports, because we're all quite similar, but you know, you pick up little bits of information through working together. So that was a really exciting initiative, and hopefully we can expand on it now the rest of the year with the conference that we've planned.
Yeah, great stuff. Okay, well, we've virtually run out of time. I will just conclude with one last question. In terms of advice to other national associations, what would you say is the one thing that you would advise them if they were thinking about developing a strategy for gender equality?
Yeah, so many thoughts. So I'm like trying to pick one, but I'd say probably one main thing would be to use resources. So I think use the ITF resources, use any resources within your own country of similar projects. You know, there's a lot of information out there about women's tennis and about women in sport and gender equality. Use as many resources as you can and ask as many people about their projects and learn from them. So I would definitely say, if you're starting out, take the time to research and take the time to read through the resources that are fully available for you to click into right after this call. So that would be my advice. I also probably want to say as well that when you are looking overall at a kind of a gender equality strategy or women in tennis strategy, try to prioritize what you feel will be most impactful. So look at maybe what you're currently providing and what you think would be most impactful for your organization, and kind of go from there. Yeah, great answer. Thank you, Grania. It's been brilliant to have you to share these learnings. Everyone, remember that there's the ITF Advantage All toolkits available on the website, the Write Your Own Strategy, Balance the Board, and Brand and Communications. And I'm sure if anyone's got any other questions for Grania, that she'd be pleased to respond if you want to reach out after this webinar. But Grania, thank you very much. And yes, see you soon. Yeah, thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Goodbye.